بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور صدق الله العظيم. As human beings in our day-to-day life, every single day we're making hundreds of decisions by the hour and by the minute. So responsibility is about taking ownership of those decisions that we are taking, micro decisions that we're taking. And in terms of taking ownership, what it's about is acknowledging and understanding that every single word that you say has an impact on people, and every action that you engage in has a consequence and an effect. And this sense of responsibility, this is responsibility, is something which generally everybody has been living by. It's something that all communities hold themselves to. This was up until very recently in the postmodern era. In the postmodern era, unwittingly, the idea of responsibility becomes challenged by freedom. The postmodern concept of freedom in and of itself is actually really good. You couldn't have, and it suggests that you can't have reasoning and you can't have thinking unless you had the freedom to criticize, the freedom to evaluate, the freedom to think. And of course you then needed freedom, which in and of itself is a really wonderful thing. But as time progresses into the modern era, the idea of freedom mutates. And so in the modern era, the freedom has now become the freedom to do whatever I want, the freedom to insult, the freedom to talk rubbish, the freedom to abuse. And this overemphasis in the modern era on freedom and the neglect of responsibility has resulted in a general immaturity. Sheikh Pirzada makes a really striking observation for this day and age. He writes in his work, Imdadul Qiyada fi Sirat Nabi al-Hidayah, النضج لا يتحقق في الإنسان بتقدم العمر. Maturity never develops within a human being just with the lapsing of time. بل بتحمل المسؤولية. But rather maturity only develops when a person is burdened with responsibility. So this overemphasis of freedom and the neglect, you know what it's led to? If you take that line of his and just look around you at the world, honestly, it is so true. It's just a really accurate reflection of the world around you. It's no surprise today that you'll see 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds dressed in toddlers' dressings and toddler suits, and we'll all just look at it and say, oh, how cute that is. And you'll see adults playing knock door ginger and slapping people and running off, and we all laugh and say, oh, what a silly thing to do. But actually the immaturity is there. Just the fact that somebody's 24 or 21 or 22, it doesn't mean that they're going to be mature. It actually comes about through a sense of responsibility. And then on the flip side of the coin of responsibility is accountability. And so responsibility and accountability are two sides of the same coin. Responsibility is taking ownership over your actions, and accountability is actually the preparedness and the readiness for you to be held for the decisions that you took in your lifetime. And so the Prophet ﷺ said that you as a group, as Muslims, if you don't have this sense of accountability, what you have is a tendency to scapegoat. And so you'll end up living lives where you're just constantly blaming others. It's somebody else's fault for what's happening in my life. And Islam is very inward looking. He said, no, it's not everybody else. But where were you? It's your decisions. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Hasibu anfusakum qabla an tuhasabu." Take account of yourselves before you get taken account of. And we know that he himself, he really did hold himself to the highest standards. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was absolutely certain of every decision he's taking. This is why confidently he sat in front of the people. Sayyidina Abu Umama radiallahu ta'ala anhu reports this. He sat in front of the people and he said, if I have ever wronged any man amongst you, If I've been abusive to any man amongst you, let him stand up and take his revenge. And he's so confident. He said, he added something there. This is really important. He adds at this point that let no man ever say that he fears being begrudged by the Prophet ﷺ because he stood up to seek his revenge. He said, let it be known, begrudging is neither my natural disposition, nor is it worthy of my status of prophethood. So you should know that I love a man who, when a right is presented to him, he takes it. He really encouraged this idea of self-accountability. You can't just do things and get away with it. And so his companions, they adopted this exact way. And so they held themselves. Every leader that took to office after the Prophet ﷺ said that I'm holding myself to account and you should hold me to account if I do anything wrong. And they were. There were instances where they were held to account. Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he gets gifted some pieces of cloth, some 5 or 6 pieces of cloth. And so he's got companions sitting around him, and so as a leader he says, well, I'm going to keep 1 piece and you can have 1 piece, you can have 1 piece, you can have 1 piece. So each person gets a piece. A couple of weeks later he turns his piece into a suit and he delivers the Friday sermon. And Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi stands up and he says, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, don't start your khutbah, don't start your sermon just yet. We're not interested in what you've got to say. And he said, why, Salman, would you not be interested in what I've got to say? He said, because I think you've wronged us. He said, how would I have wronged you? He said, well, the suit you're wearing, you gave 1 piece out to everybody. I got 1 piece. I happen to know that this 1 piece either makes a shirt or it makes a trousers. You're dressed in a full suit. Your shirt is of that cloth, and so you said to us you're taking 1, but you must have taken 2. Where's accountability for that? And so Sayyidina Umar turns to his son, he looks for his son Abdullah ibn Umar, and he stands up radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, and he says, Abdullah, do you care to explain to them? And Sayyidina Abdullah says to Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi, oh Salman, that day that my father was giving out the pieces of cloth, was I not amongst you? He said, yes you were. He said, was I not also given a piece of cloth? He said, yes you were. He said, then you should know that the piece of cloth that was given to me, when my father had his shirt made, I said, how beautiful would it look if you had a trousers made from the same cloth? Can I gift you my cloth so that you can wear a whole suit from it? And so that's how he's come about a full suit in this. Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi says, fantastic. Now go ahead and deliver your sermon. We're all ears. The Prophet ﷺ taught us this. He said that you should hold yourselves to account. Why? Because you're heading towards a world beyond the life you know. This is part of your faith. This is your belief system. And Allah Almighty, if you can escape and get away with things in this world, but you will be accountable for them in the hereafter. So before every decision, any decision that you take, you remember the words of your Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hasibu anfusakum. Take account of yourselves, because you're heading into the hereafter where your accounts will be taken.